Modern leather cracks within years. Shoes deteriorate. Belts split. Bags fall apart. Medieval leather boots, saddles, armor, book bindings remains flexible and functional after 600 years. Museum conservators handle gloves from the 1300s that you could still wear. Saddles from the 1400s that could still carry riders. This is the story of a tanning technology so sophisticated that modern chemistry has only recently understood how it works, and why every leather product you own is designed to disintegrate. Chapter 1. The shoe that dies in seasons. Open your closet. Look at leather shoes you bought 3 years ago. See the cracks forming where the shoe flexes? The stiffness where suppleness used to be? That degradation accelerates. Within 5 years, the leather will be too damaged for repair. Within 10, the shoes will be unwearable garbage. This isn't wear, it's material failure. Modern leather is tanned using chromium salts, a process developed in 1858 that transforms rawhide into leather in hours rather than months. Chrome tanning produces leather that's uniform, water-resistant, and initially attractive. It's also fundamentally unstable. Chromium-tanned leather degrades through multiple mechanisms. The chromium collagen bonds weaken over time, especially under heat and light exposure. The leather loses its plasticizers, oils that maintain flexibility through evaporation and oxidation. The fibers become brittle, cracking under stress. The process is irreversible. Once chrome leather begins deteriorating, nothing can restore it. The shoe industry knows this. Genuine leather on a label means the cheapest grade of chrome-tanned leather, essentially guaranteed to fail within 3 to 5 years. Premium leather lasts slightly longer, perhaps 7 to 10 years, but still deteriorates on the same timeline. The business model depends on replacement. Americans purchase 2.5 billion pairs of shoes annually. If shoes lasted 30 years instead of 5, the industry would shrink by 80%. Planned obsolescence isn't conspiracy, it's the industry's foundation. Meanwhile, in the Museum of London's medieval collection, leather shoes excavated from 14th century archaeological sites remain surprisingly intact. After 650 years buried in anaerobic mud, then decades in museum storage, the leather is stiff but structurally sound. Conservators can hydrate it, and it regains flexibility. The molecular structure is stable. The material hasn't failed, it's dormant, waiting for water to reactivate the collagen matrix. Modern chrome leather buried for 650 years would be unrecognizable sludge. The chromium collagen bonds would have completely broken down. Medieval vegetable-tanned leather survives because it was never designed to fail. Chapter 2. The bark that transforms skin. Medieval tanning began with oak bark specifically. The inner bark of oak trees, aged 20 to 60 years, harvested in spring when tannin concentration peaks. The bark was stripped, dried, and ground into powder rich in tannins, complex polyphenolic compounds that bind irreversibly to collagen proteins in animal hide. The chemistry is elegant. Raw hide is mostly collagen, a triple helix protein that gives skin its structure. In living animals, collagen is stabilized by the animal's biochemistry. In dead hide, that stabilization is gone. The collagen degrades rapidly, and the hide rots. Tanning prevents this by cross-linking collagen proteins, creating chemical bonds between adjacent protein molecules that lock the structure in stable configuration. Tannins accomplish this through multiple hydrogen bonds and covalent connections. Each tannin molecule can bind to multiple collagen molecules simultaneously, creating a three-dimensional network. The result is leather collagen stabilized against bacterial degradation, flexible yet strong, durable across centuries. But vegetable tanning is slow. The process takes 12 to 18 months. The hide is placed in vats containing weak tannin solution, perhaps 2 to 3% concentration. After weeks, it's moved to stronger solution, 5 to 7%. Then stronger still, 10–15%. The gradual increase allows tannins to penetrate completely, from surface to core, without over-tanning the exterior layers. Rush the process with high tannin concentration, and the hide's surface tans quickly, forming a barrier that prevents tannin penetration to interior layers. The resulting leather has hard exterior and soft, untanned interior. It appears finished but isn't fully stabilized. It will rot from the inside. Medieval tanners understood this empirically. They knew specific timing: weeks in weak liquor, months in medium liquor, final months in strong liquor. They judged readiness by feel leather that felt uniformly dense was fully tanned. Leather with soft spots needed more time. The Leather Conservation Centre in Northampton, England, analysed medieval leather samples using scanning electron microscopy. They found tannin distribution was remarkably uniform from surface to centre, evidence of proper gradual tanning. Modern vegetable tanned leather, produced through accelerated processes using heat and agitation, often shows uneven tannin distribution. The medieval product was superior because medieval tanners had time an entire year per hide to do the work properly. Chapter 3. The Pit that Breeds Patience. Medieval tanneries were architectural complexes built around tanning pits, stone-lined vats, sunk into the ground, arranged in sequences by tannin strength. A large tannery might have 30 to 50 pits, holding hundreds of hides in various stages of processing. Walk through a working tannery, and the smell overwhelms organic, musty, sharp. Tannin smells like strong tea multiplied 1,000-fold. Animal hide smells of decay despite the preservation process. The combination is distinctive, penetrating clothing and skin, identifying tanners by scent alone. The pits themselves were engineering. Lined with stone or impermeable clay, they prevented tannin leakage while allowing temperature stability. The depth, typically 2 to 3 meters, kept liquor temperature constant, protecting against summer heat and winter cold that would disrupt the tanning process. The tannin liquor was living ecosystem. Oak bark contains not just tannins but sugars, proteins, and minerals. Bacteria colonized the liquor, breaking down organic compounds and modifying tannin chemistry. The bacterial action wasn't contamination, it was essential to the process. The bacteria conditioned the tannins, making them more reactive with collagen. Tanners managed this bacterial ecology without understanding microbiology. They knew that new tannin liquor needed seeding, with liquid from established pits. They knew that certain smells indicated healthy liquor, while other smells signaled problems. They knew that liquor temperature affected tanning speed and quality. This knowledge was empirical, developed across generations, encoded in practice rather than theory. The pits required constant maintenance. Hides were moved between pits on schedules determined by inspection. Liquor was refreshed by adding ground bark and water. Temperature was monitored too cold, and tanning stopped. Too hot, and bacterial balance shifted. The work was repetitive, skilled, and never-ending. Industrial tanning eliminated the pits, replacing them with rotating drums where hides and tannin liquor tumble together, completing vegetable tanning in weeks instead of months. The speed comes at cost. The leather is less uniformly tanned, less stable, less durable. But industrial production can't accommodate 18-month processing cycles. Speed matters more than quality. Chapter 4. The Oil that Keeps Life. Tanned leather emerges from the pits, stiff and harsh. To become functional, it must be softened through currying working fats and oils into the leather to lubricate collagen fibers and restore flexibility. Medieval curriers used animal fats, tallow from cattle, sheep, or pigs, and fish oils, particularly cod liver oil and seal oil. These were worked into leather through mechanical action, pounding with wooden tools, stretching over curved beams, folding and kneading. The process took hours per hide, developing arm strength that became curriers' professional mark. The fats serve multiple functions. They separate collagen fibers, allowing them to slide past each other rather than binding rigidly. They waterproof the leather, filling microscopic spaces where water would otherwise penetrate. They preserve the leather, with fatty acids providing additional antimicrobial protection. But not all fats work equally. Medieval couriers preferred fats with specific properties, solid at room temperature but meltable with hand heat, allowing the fat to penetrate deeply when worked but remain stable in finished leather. Tallows from grass-fed animals were preferred over grain-fed. The fatty acid composition differed in ways couriers could feel but not explain. Modern leather chemistry has identified the mechanism. Grass-fed tallow contains higher proportions of saturated fats, specifically palmitic and stearic acids, which are more stable against oxidation than the unsaturated fats dominant in grain-fed tallow. The medieval couriers, selecting by tactile properties, accidentally optimized for chemical stability. The oil content in medieval leather is typically 10–15% by weight, far higher than most modern leather, which contains 3 to 5% oils. This high oil content maintains flexibility indefinitely. As long as the leather retains sufficient oil, the collagen matrix remains mobile. Medieval leather can be dried for centuries, then rehydrated and oiled, regaining flexibility. The molecular structure is intact, waiting for lubrication. Modern chrome leather cannot be restored this way. Once the plasticizers are lost, the chromium-collagen bonds lock in rigid configuration. The leather is permanently stiff. Chapter 5. The color that penetrates forever. Medieval leather came in limited colors: natural brown from tannins, black from iron compounds, white from alum tanning, and occasionally red from expensive dyes like madder or cochineal. These colors were permanent molecular bonds between dye and leather that couldn't be washed or worn away. Modern leather uses surface finishes, pigmented coatings sprayed onto the leather surface. These finishes crack and peel with flexing, exposing pale leather beneath. The degradation is characteristic of modern leather goods. Wear patterns where finish has rubbed away, revealing the reality that the color was never integrated with the material. Medieval dyeing achieved penetration through chemistry. Iron gall black, the same compounds used in ink, reacted with tannins in the leather, forming iron tannate complexes throughout the material's depth. Cut through black leather and the interior is black, not just the surface. The color is intrinsic. Madder red worked similarly. The dye molecules, particularly alizarin, formed coordination complexes with metal ions used as mordants, typically alum or iron. These complexes bonded to collagen and tannin, becoming permanent parts of the leather matrix. Modern synthetic dyes could theoretically achieve similar permanence, but they're not used that way. Dyeing penetrating the full thickness requires time, hours of soaking in dye baths, time for dye molecules to diffuse through the material. Surface finishing takes minutes. Spray pigment onto leather. Dry. Done. The time difference makes surface finishing economically preferable. The result is color that looks good initially, but fails with use. Medieval dyed leather that survived 500 years still shows its original color. The red leather binding on a 15th century book remains red. The black leather on medieval armor remains black. The color is as permanent as the material because the color is the material, not a coating applied to it. The Victoria and Albert Museum's leather collection includes garments, book bindings, and decorative objects spanning 500 to 700 years. The vegetable tanned, fully dyed pieces retain color. The pieces with surface treatments or later repairs using chrome leather show obvious degradation. The pattern is consistent. Integrated medieval technology endures. Applied modern technology fails. Chapter 6. The saddle that carries centuries. In the royal armories in Leeds, a cavalry saddle from 1480 sits in climate-controlled display. The leather vegetable tanned cowhide, curried with tallow, dyed with iron gall, remains supple enough that conservators worry about handling damage. The saddle is 544 years old and structurally sound. You could hypothetically use it, though museum policy prevents this. Modern saddles last 15 to 25 years with proper care before leather degradation requires replacement. High-end saddles might reach 30 to 40 years. The medieval saddle has outlasted 15 to 20 modern replacements. The longevity comes from construction as much as materials. The saddle tree, the rigid structure giving the saddle its shape, is made from beechwood, shaped and fitted without metal fasteners. The leather is attached using leather thongs, not nails or staples. This construction allows movement. Wood and leather expand and contract with humidity changes, but the flexible attachments accommodate the movement without creating stress points. Modern saddles use screws, staples, and glue rigid attachments that create stress concentrations. As materials expand and contract, stress concentrates at attachment points until something fails. Usually, the leather tears at the fastener. The saddle might be repairable, but often the failure cascades. One tear leads to redistributed stress, causing additional tears. The saddle becomes unusable. Medieval construction prevented this through flexibility. Every component could move slightly, distributing stress rather than concentrating it. The saddle was an integrated system where all parts accommodated the natural behavior of organic materials. But there's a deeper principle. The saddle was designed for repair. The leather thong attachments could be replaced without damaging the tree or leather panels. Worn areas of leather could be patched or replaced panel by panel. The saddle was never a monolithic object. It was an assembly that could be disassembled, repaired, and reassembled indefinitely. Modern saddles are often effectively monolithic. Glued and stapled construction can't be disassembled non-destructively. When one component fails, the entire saddle becomes unusable. We've traded repairable construction for faster manufacturing, sacrificing longevity for economy. Chapter 7. The book that survives reading. Medieval manuscripts were bound in leather, usually calfskin or goatskin. Vegetable tanned, stretched over wooden boards, and attached with leather thongs or cords. These bindings protected manuscripts for 500 to 800 years of handling, storage in varying conditions, and general use. The British Library holds thousands of medieval manuscripts with original bindings. Many show wear darkening from hand oils, scratches, surface damage, but the leather remains intact, flexible, and functional. The books can still be opened and closed without damaging the binding. Modern leather-bound books last 30 to 60 years before the leather deteriorates to the point where opening the book risks damaging the binding. The leather becomes stiff, cracks at joints, and eventually fails. Bookbinders know this. Modern leather bindings are considered semi-disposable, requiring rebinding within decades. The difference is tanning chemistry and thickness. Medieval book leather was thin 0.8 to 1.2 millimeters, but fully tanned. The thinness provided flexibility, while complete tannin penetration provided stability. The leather could flex thousands of times without damage because every collagen fiber was stabilized by tannin bonding. Modern bookbinding leather is often thicker, 1.5 to 2.5 millimeters, but incompletely tanned. Chrome tanning or accelerated vegetable tanning produces leather that's tanned near surfaces, but less so in the interior. The first few hundred flexing cycles work fine. As flexing continues, the incompletely tanned interior fibers begin failing. The leather cracks from the inside. By the time cracks are visible on the surface, the interior structure has already failed extensively. The other factor is oils. Medieval book leather was curried with enough oil to maintain flexibility indefinitely. Modern book leather contains minimal oils. Too much oil might stain pages. This seems protective, but creates fragility. The leather has no buffer against drying. As ambient humidity drops, the leather dries rapidly, becoming brittle. Medieval bookbinders understood empirically that protecting pages from oil staining mattered less than protecting the binding from brittleness. They used well-oiled leather. If some oil transferred to pages, that was acceptable cost for a binding lasting centuries. Chapter 8. The armor that stopped blades. Medieval soldiers wore leather armor, boiled leather cuirasses, hardened leather plates, layered leather gambeson that provided surprising protection against cuts and some protection against arrows and light weapon thrusts. This seems impossible. Leather is soft organic material. How could it stop steel weapons? The secret is cuir boiled leather. The technique involves heating vegetable-tanned leather in water or oil to 70–90 degrees Celsius, causing the collagen structure to undergo partial denaturation. The collagen chains unfold and rebond in new configurations, creating rigid structure. As the leather cools and dries, it maintains the rigid form. The result is material, nearly as hard as wood but much lighter and slightly flexible. Tests at the Royal Armoury's Research Department measured penetration resistance of medieval boiled leather. A queer bouillie plate 6 mm thick stopped slashing sword cuts completely. Thrusting attacks with daggers penetrated, but required significant force, roughly 50% more force than penetrating an equivalent thickness of wood. Arrow penetration depended on arrow-type bodkin points, designed for armor penetration, could defeat 6 mm queer bouillie at close range. Broadhead hunting arrows could not. The leather's flexibility gave it advantage over rigid materials. Metal armor transmits impact shock through the plate to the wearer. Boiled leather absorbed impacts through slight compression, distributing force across the structure. A mace blow that would fracture bones through metal plate might bruise through leather but wouldn't transfer the full impact. Modern ballistic testing has confirmed this. While medieval boiled leather can't stop bullets, nothing medieval could. It provides comparable protection to modern Kevlar against edged weapons and better protection against blunt impact. The organic material's viscoelastic properties, combining viscous energy absorption with elastic deformation, create impact resistance that rigid materials can't match. Some military researchers are exploring leather composite armors for situations requiring cut and impact protection without ballistic performance, police riot gear, fencing protective equipment. They're rediscovering that boiled leather, properly made, is extraordinarily effective protective material. Chapter 9. The Economic Model of Permanence. Medieval leather goods were expensive. A pair of quality boots cost a craftsman several days' wages. A saddle might cost a month's income. Leather armor was substantial investment. But these items lasted decades with proper care, often entire working lifetimes. The economics worked. Expensive initial purchase, minimal replacement cost. Modern leather goods are cheap initially. Mass-produced shoes cost $50, 150. A decent bag costs $100, 300. But they require replacement every 3 to 7 years. Over a 30-year period, you'll purchase 5 to 10 pairs of shoes, totaling $500, 1,500. The cheap goods are expensive through repeated replacement. Medieval boots, costing $500 equivalent, but lasting 30 years, are far more economical. The shift happened through industrialization. Mechanized tanning, standardized production, and chrome leather chemistry reduced production time from 18 months to days, and labor costs from skilled craftsmanship to semi-skilled operation. Leather goods became affordable to working classes. This democratization is real. Benefit medieval quality. Leather was inaccessible to poor people. But the trade-off is durability. We've exchanged expensive and permanent for cheap and disposable. For consumers with limited capital, cheap and disposable is rational choice. $50. Shoes that last 3 years are more accessible than $500. Boots that last 30, even though the boots are better economic value. The poverty penalty is real. Poor people pay more over time because they cannot afford efficient purchases. The leather industry's business model depends on this dynamic. If everyone bought expensive, durable leather that lasted 30 years, the industry would shrink to 10% of current size. Revenue depends on continuous replacement of cheap goods. This creates perverse incentive. The industry profits from inferior products. Superior products would destroy their market. So the industry actively avoids creating durable goods, even though the technology exists and was standard practice for 2,000 years. Chapter 10. The Tanner Who Preserves. In Devon, England, J. and F. J. Baker & Co. operates Britain's last oak bark tannery, using methods essentially unchanged since medieval times. They've been tanning leather since 1862, inheriting techniques from even earlier tanners. Their process takes 12 to 14 months per hide. The hides are placed in pits containing oak bark liquor, starting with weak solution and progressing to strong. The tannery master, John, judges leather readiness by cutting test samples and examining the cross-section. Properly tanned leather has uniform color throughout. If the center is paler, it needs more time. The finished leather has distinct characteristics. Rich brown color from oak tannins, slight oily feel from tallows worked in during currying, and substance thickness and density that modern chrome leather lacks. This leather is what medieval leatherworkers would recognize. It's what they used. John explains the economics. A hide requires 12 to 14 months in pits, occupying space, consuming bark, requiring monitoring. The labor and material costs are substantial. He charges £18.25 per square foot, roughly 10 times the cost of chrome-tanned leather. His market is tiny. High-end shoemakers, saddlers, bookbinders, and conservators restoring historic leather goods. Perhaps 200 regular customers worldwide. The business survives on reputation and niche demand, not volume. He's trained 3 apprentices in 40 years. 2 left the trade, 1 retiring, 1 moving to modern tanning. The knowledge transfer is precarious. When John retires in 5 to 10 years, the tannery's future is uncertain. His remaining apprentice could continue operations, but will there be demand? Will the economics support another generation? John isn't optimistic. The craft is dying. Not because the product is inferior by every measure. Oak bark tanned leather is superior to chrome leather. It's dying because modern economies can't accommodate 12-month production cycles and artisan pricing. The market demands cheap goods, available immediately. Traditional tanning provides expensive goods available eventually. The market wins. The craft dies. Except for a few practitioners serving shrinking niche markets, hanging on through reputation and subsidy from customers willing to pay 10x standard price for 10x standard quality. Chapter 11. The science that explains antiquity. Modern leather chemistry has validated medieval practices while revealing their mechanisms. Researchers at the University of Northampton's Institute for Creative Leather Technologies analyzed medieval leather samples, comparing them to modern equivalents. Their findings consistently show medieval superiority. Tannin distribution. Medieval leather shows uniform tannin through full thickness. Modern vegetable tanned leather shows gradients higher concentration at surfaces, lower in core. The uniform distribution provides better stability against bacterial degradation and chemical aging. Oil content. Medieval leather contains 12–15% oils by weight. Modern leather contains 3 to 5%. The higher oil content maintains flexibility longer and provides better water resistance. The oils also scavenge free radicals, slowing oxidation that would otherwise degrade collagen. Fiber structure. Scanning electron microscopy shows medieval leather has tightly packed, well-organized collagen fibers with minimal voids. Modern chrome leather has looser, less organized structure with more voids. The dense packing increases mechanical strength and reduces susceptibility to crack propagation. pH stability. Medieval vegetable tanned leather has pH around 4.5 to 5.5, slightly acidic but stable. Chrome leather has pH 3.5 to 4.5, more acidic and less stable. Over decades, the chrome leather's acidity gradually increases as chromium complexes break down, accelerating material degradation. The research confirms what conservators knew from handling artifacts. Medieval leather is simply better material. Not better for its time, better absolutely, by modern performance criteria. The medieval tanners, working empirically without understanding collagen chemistry or tannin molecular structure, produced leather superior to what modern industrial chemistry produces. This is humbling for materials science. We understand the mechanisms far better than medieval craftsmen did. But understanding hasn't translated into better products, because our production priorities are different. Medieval tanners optimized for durability. Modern tanners optimize for speed and cost. The optimization targets determine outcomes. Chapter 12. The Conservation Crisis. Museums worldwide hold millions of leather artifacts. Shoes, clothing, armor, book bindings, saddles, bags, decorative items. These collections span from Roman period through present. A stark pattern emerges. Artifacts made before 1850 are generally in good condition. Artifacts made after 1950 are often deteriorating rapidly. The Victorian and early 20th century pieces, 1850 to 1950, are mixed, reflecting the transition from traditional to industrial tanning. Chrome-tanned leather from the 20th century presents conservation nightmares. The leather is degrading faster than conservators can treat it. Chromium-collagen bonds break down, releasing chromium salts that acidify the leather and accelerate further degradation. The process is autocatalytic. Degradation accelerates degradation. Conservators use various treatments: washing to remove harmful salts, consolidating with adhesives, storing in precisely controlled environments. These interventions slow degradation but cannot stop it. The fundamental chemistry is unstable. The leather will continue degrading regardless of treatment. Some institutions are making difficult choices. Items made from chrome leather have limited life expectancy regardless of conservation efforts. Resources might be better spent documenting these items through photography and detailed description rather than attempting futile preservation. Vegetable-tanned leather artifacts, including medieval pieces, 500 to 800 years old, are far more stable. They require minimal conservation beyond cleaning, occasional conditioning with appropriate oils, and stable storage environment. The older material is less work to preserve than the newer material. This creates inverted conservation priorities. Museums spend disproportionate resources trying to preserve 20th century chrome leather that will degrade regardless, while medieval vegetable-tanned leather survives with minimal intervention. It's triage addressing urgent problems while stable materials remain stable. But it's also tragedy. The 20th century's material culture is evaporating because we built it from unstable materials, while medieval material culture survives because medieval craftsmen built for permanence. Chapter 13. The regulation that killed tanneries. Traditional tanning creates wastewater, spent tannin liquors, lime from hide preparation, fats from currying. This waste is organic and biodegradable, but voluminous. Medieval tanneries were situated near rivers to access water for processing and to discharge waste. Environmental regulations in the 1960 seconds, 1990 seconds restricted wastewater discharge, requiring treatment before release. This was appropriate. Untreated tannery waste degrades water quality, but the regulations were written for industrial chrome tanning, which produces toxic chromium waste requiring chemical treatment. The regulations mandated treatment systems designed for chromium removal. For traditional vegetable tanneries producing biodegradable organic waste, these systems were unnecessary but legally required. The costs of installing compliant treatment systems bankrupted many traditional tanneries. Those surviving had to modernize to chrome tanning, which required the treatment systems or exit the business. Hundreds of traditional tanneries across Europe closed between 1970 to 2000, unable to afford compliance or unwilling to abandon traditional methods for chrome tanning. This was regulatory failure. The environmental regulations addressed real problems but were insufficiently nuanced. They lumped all tanning together, requiring treatment appropriate for toxic waste, even when the waste wasn't toxic. Better regulation would have distinguished between chrome and vegetable tanning, requiring chromium treatment while allowing biodegradable organic waste to be composted or discharged with minimal treatment. Some countries have reformed regulations, but damage is done. The tanneries are closed. The knowledge is lost. Current regulations might permit traditional tanning, but nobody's left to practice it. The remaining traditional tanneries, perhaps 20 inches Western Europe, survived through luck, exceptional economic resilience, or operating in jurisdictions with more appropriate regulations. They're artifacts of regulatory variation, not thriving industry. Chapter 14. The revival that's beginning. Slowly, traditional leather tanning is being rediscovered. Small producers, often serving luxury or heritage markets, are returning to vegetable tanning with long timescales and traditional methods. The movement is driven by multiple factors. Consumer awareness of chrome leather's environmental toxicity, desire for durable goods opposing disposable culture, recognition that traditional materials are superior for certain applications. In Italy, several tanneries have never abandoned traditional methods. Tuscan leather vegetable tanned using chestnut or oak bark, curried with traditional techniques, has maintained reputation for quality. These tanneries supply high-end shoemakers, leatherworkers, and fashion houses willing to pay premium prices. In Japan, traditional leather crafts using techniques derived from samurai armor making are experiencing renaissance. Young craftspeople are apprenticing with elderly masters, learning techniques before they disappear. The Japanese aesthetic values wabi-sabi beauty in aging and imperfection. Leather that develops patina through use aligns with this philosophy. In North America, a small movement of leather crafters is teaching themselves traditional techniques from historical texts, experimentation, and rare instruction from remaining practitioners. Online communities share information, troubleshoot problems, document results. The knowledge is reconstructing, slowly. The scale is tiny, perhaps 500 people worldwide seriously practicing traditional leather tanning using historical methods. But its growth from near extinction. 20 years ago, maybe 50 people were doing this work. The trend is positive, though fragile. Whether traditional leather tanning survives depends on economics. Can enough consumers be convinced to pay 10x more for goods lasting 10x longer? Can production scale slightly while maintaining quality and methods? Can regulatory frameworks accommodate organic tanning waste? Can knowledge transfer before the last traditional masters retire? The answers aren't predetermined. The craft is at inflection point. Either it expands into viable niche industry, or it contracts into historical reenactment. The next 20 years determine which. Chapter 15. The leather that waits. You cannot buy truly traditional leather easily. Small producers exist, but their output is limited and expensive. What you can do is recognize that genuine leather means worst quality, that chrome-tanned leather is inherently temporary, and that vegetable-tanned leather, though more expensive, is the only option for items meant to last. You can seek out makers using traditional materials. You can pay premium prices for superior goods. You can maintain leather properly cleaning, conditioning with appropriate oils, storing in stable conditions. You can repair rather than replace. Medieval leather teaches a lesson modern culture resists. Quality costs money, but saves money across time. Cheap goods requiring frequent replacement are expensive. Expensive goods lasting indefinitely are economical. But the math only works if you think across decades, not months. Medieval craftsmen had no choice but to think long-term. Materials were expensive, labor was valuable, and customers expected goods to last. The alignment of incentives produced quality. Modern markets optimize for quarterly earnings, rapid inventory turnover, and continuous consumption. The alignment of incentives produces obsolescence. The leather that never rots is still possible. The chemistry works. The techniques are documented. Small producers demonstrate viability. What's missing is cultural willingness to value permanence over convenience, to accept that quality requires time, to pay for durability rather than appearance. Medieval leatherworkers couldn't imagine a world where goods were designed to fail. We can't seem to imagine a world where they don't. The leather is waiting in scattered workshops, in old techniques, in materials that outlast the civilizations that made them. It's showing us what's possible, if we're humble enough to learn from people who made boots that lasted longer than empires.